The husband waits for his wife to come home for dinner, but instead of a kiss, there's a stranger's scent on her clothes. At first, he refuses to believe it. Then he starts to notice. Her habits have changed, her eyes have lost their light, even dinner has become a reason for scorn. While she wipes the traces of another man's attention from her lips, he gathers the evidence: deleted photos, hidden conversations, unfamiliar restaurants. It's not his guilt. He's no longer guessing. He knows. And one evening, dressed in his finest suit, he walks out to meet her and her lover. Not to beg, but to show what betrayal looks like under the glow of chandeliers and the clink of expensive wine glasses. What happens when the quiet husband stops being convenient, and when the truth walks into the room, right beside him. Hello, my friend. Before we begin, I have a quick favor. Check the description and subscribe to my friend's channel. He'll be so thankful. Now, onto the video. The soft, rhythmic tap of a knife striking the cutting board echoed through the quiet kitchen as Julian Marks carefully prepared vegetables for the evening meal. He sliced carrots, celery, and onions with practiced precision, each piece even and deliberate, the result of years spent refining his culinary skills to please his wife, Camille. The microwave's digital clock glowed 7:55 p.m. Its silent countdown only highlighted her absence. She should have walked through the door nearly 60 minutes ago. A pot of marinara sauce simmered quietly on the stove, releasing a lush blend of garlic and basil, her favorite combination. But Julian barely noticed the aroma anymore. His gaze kept drifting toward his phone, lying untouched on the spotless granite counter. Wiping his hands on a dish towel, he picked up the phone once again and reread the last message she'd sent. "Working late again, babe. Don't wait up." The timestamp read 6:30 p.m. Julian's jaw tightened as he placed the phone back down without typing a reply. This made 4 nights this week, the 10th time in just a few weeks. He couldn't recall the last time they'd actually shared a meal face to face. He resumed chopping, but his motions had lost their earlier control, now uneven, hurried, echoing the frustration rising inside him. He glanced around the kitchen, every surface immaculate, the marble counters gleaming, the stainless steel appliances spotless. Camille had designed it all, chosen every detail. But now it all seemed sterile, too perfect, like something meant for display, not for living. Their marriage felt much the same, flawless from a distance, but brittle and lifeless when examined up close. Julian's eyes drifted toward the family portraits hanging near the doorway, images from brighter days. Camille's smile had once been genuine in those photos, her eyes full of warmth. Now that same look seemed reserved, critical, any affection buried deep beneath disapproval. The metallic rattle of keys turning in the front door snapped him out of his thoughts. Heels, designer ones he'd picked out for her birthday, clicked sharply against the hardwood floor. Camille stepped into the kitchen, a gust of cold air and a faint, unfamiliar cologne trailing behind her. Not his. "You're cooking?" she said, her voice tinged with the now familiar edge of condescension. She let her laptop bag drop onto the counter, making sure it landed turned away from him. "I told you not to wait," she added, her tone flat. Julian studied her. She looked carefully put together, but not like someone who'd just come from a 12-hour shift. Her hair was freshly styled in smooth waves. Her lipstick was flawless, bright, far too pristine for someone allegedly buried in paperwork. The fitted black dress she wore wasn't the outfit she'd left home in that morning. "Thought you might want dinner after such a long day," he said evenly, though the questions behind his calm tone simmered. The Henderson deal must be intense. She gripped her phone slightly tighter, a subtle but telling sign. "We ordered in at the office," she said, eyes on her screen. "Some of us skipped dinner to keep working." Her focus stayed locked on the phone, refusing to meet his gaze. "Right," Julian muttered, turning back to the cutting board. His knife now struck the wood with short, forceful chops. "How's the case progressing?" he asked. "It's fine." The response was curt and hung awkwardly in the space between them. Without saying more, Camille turned and began climbing the stairs. "I'm going to shower." "You already showered this morning," Julian said, his voice edged with something he couldn't suppress. She stopped halfway up the stairs, shoulders tensing. "Are you keeping tabs on when I bathe now?" she snapped, not bothering to turn around. "Just making an observation," he answered. She laughed, short, bitter. "Some of us still take pride in looking professional, Julian. Not everyone's content in rumpled pants and bargain bin shirts." The words stung like a slap, but Julian remained still. "The sauce will still be good if you change your mind," he said softly. "Don't bother. I told you. I already ate." Her voice floated down as she disappeared from sight. The steady click of her heels on the steps felt like nails sealing the coffin on what remained of their connection. Julian stood quietly, listening as the distant rush of water signaled the start of her shower upstairs. The rich smell of the sauce, once warm and comforting, now seemed cruel. He turned off the stove and began returning ingredients to their places. Each container clicked shut with finality, the sound sharp and conclusive, like pieces of a puzzle locking into place. Only now was he starting to recognize the image that puzzle was forming, and it terrified him. That night, Julian lay wide awake in bed. Though Camille was only inches away on the other side of their king-sized mattress, the emotional gulf between them felt vast. The cool feel of the Egyptian cotton sheets, Camille's preference, offered no comfort. Beside him, Camille slept soundly, her breathing deep and even. Even in unconsciousness, she kept her back to him, occupying her side of the bed with cold precision. Her phone rested on the nightstand, and it buzzed once, then again. She stirred slightly, murmured something inaudible, but didn't wake. The screen's faint blue light cut through the darkness like a whispered confession waiting to be heard. Julian stared at it, torn between doubt and the sinking weight of suspicion. For years, he'd never felt the need to question her, never thought he'd have to. But lately, that certainty had unraveled, thread by thread. The phone vibrated a third time. Camille shifted, muttering in her sleep. With a trembling hand, Julian reached out and picked it up. The message that appeared on the lock screen made his heart plummet. "Missing you already. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Sweet dreams. Beautiful." Julian's fingers quivered faintly as he placed the phone back on the nightstand. The room suddenly felt tighter, the atmosphere thick with something he couldn't name. Restlessness overcame him. He eased out from beneath the sheets and slipped downstairs to the home office, moving quietly so as not to wake the silence. He needed space to think. As with every corner of their home, the office reflected Camille's impeccable taste. Clean lines, deliberate symmetry, an air of practiced sophistication. Framed commendations from her firm decorated the wall beside their college diplomas. On the desk, a wedding photo. Camille radiant in her gown, Julian beside her, glowing with pride. 7 years, 7 years of shared goals, mutual encouragement, and a life they were supposed to be building together, now seemingly unraveling around him. Sleep never came. By sunrise, he was still in the chair, watching the dawn bleed into the sky beyond the window pane. His mind cycled endlessly, looping through memories of their marriage like a reel stuck on rewind. He searched for the fracture point, when her drive had hardened into emotional distance, when teasing remarks about his work had shifted into cutting critiques, when gestures of affection began to feel automatic, her kisses distant. That morning, Camille barely looked at him before rushing out, mumbling something vague about an early meeting. She'd changed outfits 3 times before landing on a snug crimson dress he didn't recognize. "Don't forget, dinner with the Hendersons next week," he called out as she reached for the door. He scrutinized her, attuned to the unease rising inside him. Her grip on her handbag tightened imperceptibly. "They're in Europe this month," she replied, not bothering to face him. "You knew that." Then the door closed behind her with a sharp click. The Hendersons abroad, still posting, still active. Another fissure splitting open beneath him. Julian didn't go into work. He called out sick. The idea of dealing with spreadsheets and staff meetings felt absurd, white noise in a mind drowning in static. He roamed the house aimlessly, noticing things he'd long overlooked. A pack of cigarettes buried in her nightstand, despite her quitting years ago. Receipts from restaurants he'd never heard her mention. A spare charger stuffed in a drawer, wrong brand for the phone she currently used. In their closet, bags tucked in the back held lacy undergarments still bearing tags. He didn't recognize them. The sizes were slightly off, smaller, seemingly purchased for effect, not comfort. His hands shook as he opened his laptop and navigated to their shared cloud storage. Camille had always been meticulous about syncing her phone, perhaps too meticulous. Hidden in a maze of nested folders was one labeled Work Projects 2024, and within the confirmation, photographs, dozens of them. Camille with a stranger, a tall, polished man, likely in his 40s. They were having dinner, relaxing in hotel suites, posing for intimate selfies. The man's smug smile seemed to taunt Julian through the screen. One photo showed them at the very restaurant where he'd taken Camille for their anniversary. The timestamp didn't lie. She'd been texting him, her husband, while seated across from another man. Then came the messages, screenshots, rows of them. The man's name, Damien Trent, a senior partner at a rival firm. The words Camille had written made Julian's stomach churn. "You're the only one who really sees me," she had typed. "Julian's so ordinary. He'll never get me like you do. You deserve someone who shines as brightly as you. I don't know why I settled. I thank God every day you showed me what I was missing." The exchanges stretched back months, through anniversaries, holidays, even the weekend Julian had surprised her with tickets to Paris. Tickets he'd saved for over 6 months to afford, skipping lunches and working overtime. He slammed the laptop shut, a wave of nausea overtaking him. He stumbled to the bathroom and collapsed on the cold tile, retching. The physical sickness mirrored the emotional wreckage shredding him from the inside out. When he finally rose, he splashed cold water on his face and stared into the mirror. The vanity was crowded with high-end soaps and creams, gifts he'd picked out with care, convinced she appreciated the thought. Now he wondered if she'd mocked them with Damien, laughing behind his back. He grabbed his keys and walked out. The house, the one they had chosen, decorated, dreamed in, felt like it was caving in. No longer a home, just a graveyard of betrayal. He drove aimlessly. His phone lit up with a text from Camille. "Dinner with the girls tonight. Don't wait up another stab to the ribs." He pulled into an empty parking lot, gripping the steering wheel until the leather groaned beneath his hands. The chaos inside him compressed, sharpened, frozen into resolve. Opening his messaging app, he began to type. "Hope you and Damien enjoy dinner. The Henderson account must be keeping you both very busy. Tell him I said hi." His thumb hovered over send. No, that wasn't enough. Not for this. Camille and Damien needed to see his face when the illusion shattered. He needed to be there when the truth shattered right in front of them. There was no doubt in his mind about the place they'd chosen to meet. The Azure, Camille's go-to venue for her so-called professional dinners. They held a standing reservation there, a detail that now felt less like a romantic ritual and more like a routine excuse, one that likely masked her countless meetings with Damien. With laser-like focus, Julian navigated his way through the streets toward the restaurant, his thoughts clearer than they had been in ages. Back at the house, he had changed into the charcoal Tom Ford suit, the one Camille had insisted gave him presence, the same suit she'd once helped him pick out. He adjusted his tie slowly in front of the mirror, each movement deliberate, measured. The man staring back at him wasn't the oblivious husband Camille believed she could fool. This man radiated resolve, someone who'd drawn the line and would no longer live under the weight of deception. In his office, the safe clicked open with a low, metallic sigh. Camille had never once asked for the combination, content to leave the serious stuff to him. Tucked beneath a neat stack of official documents, passports, deeds, insurance files, was a manila folder he had hoped he'd never have to touch. Inside were divorce papers, drawn up quietly 2 months ago, back when his suspicions had only just begun to take root. He had tried to dismiss them at first, convinced himself he was being paranoid, overly sensitive. But now, retrieving the envelope felt less like an act of aggression, and more like setting down a burden he had carried alone for too long. He slid the folder into his inner jacket pocket and stepped outside into the brisk evening air. The city traffic oozed forward in sluggish waves, but he felt no urgency. Let them sip their wine, indulge in their pretense, relish the illusion of secrecy they thought still held. Just the thought of their reactions nearly brought a smile to his lips. Fragments of their messages resurfaced in his mind, ugly reminders he could never unsee. He's always trying too hard. It's almost sad. You need someone who actually understands your value, babe. I don't know how I stayed with him this long. Each phrase landed like a strike, firming his spine with renewed purpose. The Julian who had begged for her attention, who swallowed every sign and silenced his instincts. That man was gone. What remained was someone unwilling to keep living in denial. As he pulled into the Azure's circular drive, the valet recognized him immediately. "Good evening, Mr. Marks. We weren't expecting you tonight." With a calm nod, Julian handed over his keys. "Plans changed," he replied, his voice cool and steady. He clocked Camille's BMW parked alongside a gleaming black Mercedes he didn't recognize. Of course, Damien would drive something loud, something that announced itself. Inside, the maitre d', Adrian, looked startled as Julian approached the host stand. "Mr. Marks, this is unexpected. We weren't made aware." He paused, glancing toward the dining area. "Mrs. Marks is already seated with her associate," he said finally, the hesitation before associate conveying more than the word itself. Julian briefly wondered how many of the staff had stood by silently, pouring wine, serving entrees, witnessing flirtations, all while pretending his absence wasn't conspicuous. "Thank you, Adrian," Julian said with a cordial smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I thought I'd drop in for a surprise." And a surprise it would be, though not the kind either Camille or Damien had in mind. The dining room opened before him like an ornate theater, cast in golden light and muted conversation. Chandeliers sparkled above, illuminating white tablecloths and carefully arranged settings, a scene curated for elegance and illusion. The murmurs of conversation and soft clink of cutlery formed a rhythmic backdrop, the refined soundtrack to their betrayal. He used to admire this place. Now it served only as the perfect setting for the truth to surface. A hostess stepped forward with a practiced smile, but Adrian intercepted her with a quiet word and a tight expression. "Mr. Marks," he said gently, "perhaps we could speak in private for just a moment." "That won't be necessary," Julian replied evenly. "I know exactly where I'm going." He spotted her instantly. Camille was unmistakable in the same red dress she'd worn that morning, her hair styled meticulously, cascading over one shoulder as she leaned in close to Damien. The dress, once passed off as tasteful, now looked unmistakably suggestive, no longer a professional choice, but one meant to entice. Damien appeared exactly as Julian remembered from the photos he'd found. Hair carefully grayed at the temples, his bespoke suit no doubt worth a small fortune, and that smug, entitled expression worn like cologne. He was leaning toward Camille, their hands nearly touching across the table, a bottle of wine already half empty between them. Together, they looked like the couple Camille had always imagined herself part of, influential, cultured, admired. Julian stood still, observing. Camille laughed, that carefully polished, effortless laugh she reserved for networking events and high-stakes meetings. Her fingers circled the rim of her glass in a slow, deliberate motion, a move he now saw for what it was, pure performance. A waiter arrived at their table with another bottle, uncorked with ceremony, and Camille's voice carried just far enough. "The Chateau Margaux, you always know just what to choose." It was their signature wine, the one they'd discovered purely by chance on their honeymoon. Of course, Camille had no reservations about serving it to Damien as well. She caught sight of Julian before he noticed her, her eyes widening just slightly, a flicker of genuine shock, before her polished courtroom composure swiftly resurfaced. She straightened in her chair, the warmth in her smile retreating into something icy and cutting as she tapped Damien's arm. "Julian," she said coolly, her voice dipped in that familiar scathing contempt. "What a surprise to see you here." Her gaze swept the room, casually checking to see if they had an audience, always calculating. "Were you following me?" Damien turned his head, his initial annoyance melting into mild amusement as he took in the man before him. He leaned back in his seat with easy confidence, projecting the calm dominance of someone unaccustomed to being rattled. "So, you're the husband," he said, voice smooth and unbothered. "Camille mentioned you more than once." Julian's expression remained composed as he approached. "Is that so?" he replied. "Funny. She's never mentioned you, Damien. Not once, though I doubt that was an accident." The slight flicker of confusion that crossed Damien's face was nearly satisfying. Camille's fingers tightened around her wine glass until the color drained from her knuckles. "Don't you have anything better to do than show up just to provoke me?" she snapped. "We're having a legal discussion, something that might be a bit out of your depth." Without waiting for an invitation, Julian pulled out the vacant chair opposite them and sat down. He noted, with quiet satisfaction, the faint recoil from both Camille and Damien as he settled in. "You're talking about the Henderson case, right?" he said, casually turning to Damien with a polite smile. "Fascinating matter. How are the Hendersons liking their European getaway?" A muscle twitched in Camille's jaw. For a moment, her practiced mask faltered, panic flashing in her eyes. "This is completely inappropriate, Julian. You're embarrassing yourself." "Is that what you think?" Julian reached for the wine bottle, inspecting the label with an air of false interest. "Chateau Margaux 2015, he said. "Superb year. Unless I'm mistaken, it's the same one we picked up at that little vineyard in Bordeaux, on our honeymoon, remember?" He turned to Damien with a faint smile. "Did she tell you that story when she picked it out? Or did she pass it off as the result of her excellent taste in wine?" Damien cleared his throat, clearly thrown by the turn in conversation. "If this is some kind of—" "I'm just enjoying the ambiance," Julian interrupted, his tone smooth and unhurried. "The Azure always did have great atmosphere, ideal for a romantic night." He locked eyes with Camille. "We used to come here for our anniversaries, though I imagine you've been here more recently than that. Table 14, still your go-to, right? Great lighting for all those selfies I stumbled across." Color surged into Camille's cheeks, her grip faltering as she struggled to hold her expression steady. "If you're finished with this little performance—" "I do appreciate the floral arrangements," Julian continued, lifting the bottle again with deliberate grace. "Everything's so meticulously done, so polished, nothing out of place." He poured himself a glass with slow precision. "Reminds me of our marriage," he said, his voice quieter now. "All those little details, the dinners, the holiday pictures, the charity fundraisers your firm loved. That book club you joined, what was the line again? Something about how networking is everything in law?" "That's enough," Damien said sharply, the cracks beginning to show in his previously relaxed demeanor. He leaned forward, clearly trying to assert dominance. You should leave. Interesting choice of words, Julian mused. Didn't Camille say the same thing to Marcus just last month? Damien's expression twisted in bafflement. Camille sucked in a breath, loud enough to draw attention. Julian's hand faltered slightly as he poured. A stream of deep red wine splashed across Camille's crimson dress, soaking into the fabric like blood. Some of it landed on Damien's crisp white shirt and silk tie, staining both instantly. He set the bottle down with theatrical care, the glass clinking lightly against the tabletop. Camille shot to her feet with a sharp cry, drawing glances from nearby diners. Are you insane? This dress costs more than your monthly salary. I deeply regret that, Julian said, maddeningly calm. How careless of me. About as careless as leaving your cloud drive accessible on our shared computer. For someone in law, you really don't handle digital security very well. Camille's face went pale. Damien had risen now as well, wine dripping from his shirt and onto his designer shoes. You had no business going through her files, Damien growled, stepping closer in a clear attempt to intimidate. He was taller, looming, but Julian didn't budge. Her private files? Julian let out a short, bitter laugh. You mean like the private dinner you had with my wife on our anniversary? Or the private weekend in the Hamptons while I was at home caring for my dying mother? He turned back to Camille, his voice cutting. How was the spa, by the way? The one you put on our joint account and labeled as business-related. You're causing a scene, Camille hissed, dabbing at her dress with a napkin. Her hands trembled as she pressed the linen into the stained fabric, only spreading the wine further. You really put on a show, didn't you, Camille? Not just once, but every single month. A flawless act. Julian adjusted his tie with deliberate precision. The devoted wife, the relentless attorney, the perfect entertainer, you nailed each role, except for one. And which one would that be? Camille's voice was sharp with anger, but the undercurrent of fear didn't escape him. You miscalculated how stupid I am, he said, his grin as cold as steel. Did you genuinely think I'd never figure it out? The unexplained late nights, the last-minute wardrobe changes, the impulsive weekend retreats. He gave a slow shake of his head. I may not be a corporate executive, but I'm perfectly capable of putting two and two together. Damien moved in, trying to use his stature to intimidate. The scent of his cologne, one Julian had recently noticed lingering on Camille, was overpowering and artificial. Back off now, unless you want this to get messy. Messy? Julian didn't flinch. You mean like finding messages where my wife mocks me to her lover? Or waking up one day to realize my whole marriage was built on deception? That kind of messy? You're pathetic, Damien sneered, jabbing a finger into Julian's chest. Just take a look at yourself. You're a joke. Can you blame Camille for seeking something better? Any driven woman would. The restaurant hushed. Conversations died as curious patrons turned to gawk. A few raised their phones discreetly, recording the spectacle. Julian didn't mind. In fact, he welcomed it. Let the crowd see them for who they really were. Something better? Julian's voice dropped to a razor's edge. You want to know what's really pathetic, Damien? A man who builds himself up by dismantling families, who seduces women already spoken for because he lacks the confidence to find one on his own. I don't belong to anyone, Camille snapped, her voice brittle with rage. You never did, Julian said evenly. What you belong to is your ambition, that constant climb to somewhere higher, no matter the cost. He turned toward Damien. Tell me something. Has she told you about the credit card she maxed out behind my back? The deliveries she rerouted so I wouldn't notice? The stack of bills she buried in her office drawer? Color drained from Camille's face. Damien glanced at her, his expression clouded with uncertainty. Or perhaps, Julian went on calmly, you already knew about the junior partner she was stringing along before you entered the scene. What was his name? Marcus? The one she used to meet at the riverside under the excuse of a yoga class? Damien's confidence faltered. What the hell is he talking about, Camille? He's lying, Camille snapped, but her voice faltered, cracking under the pressure. He's just trying to turn you against me. Is that right? Julian slid his phone from his jacket pocket. How about we compare notes, Damien? I've saved screenshots, organized, time-stamped. Seems Camille has a pattern, successful men who can advance her standing. He locked eyes with Damien. Marcus was just a stepping stone. You're the next one. Damien's jaw tightened with fury. He seized Julian's arm, his grip bruising. I told you to shut your mouth. But Julian moved swiftly, quicker than anyone expected. He twisted out of Damien's grasp and used his momentum against him, sending the man crashing backward. Damien slammed into a table, tipping over wine glasses in a splash of red and shattered crystal. A chorus of gasps echoed through the dining room. A woman near the bar whispered, "Oh my God," barely concealing her excitement as she continued filming. Damien stumbled to his feet, his clothes rumpled, his face livid. "You'll regret this," he growled, brushing wine off his jacket. "I'll make sure of it." "No," Julian replied, his tone even. "My only regret is wasting 7 years on someone who didn't deserve my loyalty." He reached into his coat once more and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the table as wine began to seep into its corners. 7 years of standing by her, applauding her accomplishments, building a future, while she schemed behind my back. "What is that?" Camille asked, though her eyes betrayed that she already knew. "Your exit papers," Julian said. "For both of us. You always said you wanted someone who shared your ambition." "Well, congratulations. Just make sure to ask Damien about his wife in Connecticut before you start redecorating." He gave Damien a pointed look. "Scarlett, isn't it? The woman who thinks you're attending a legal workshop this weekend?" Damien froze. Camille turned to him sharply, eyes wide. "Wife?" she breathed. Oh, he didn't bring her up? Julian's smile was glacial. Funny how certain facts slip the mind when lust takes over. But then again, secrecy has always been your specialty, hasn't it, Camille? Damien lunged, but before he could reach Julian, the restaurant's security team closed in. They grabbed Damien by the arms, restraining him as he hurled obscenities and threats. "You're going to take me down?" he shouted. Julian gave a cold, mirthless laugh. "No, Damien, that's what you and Camille already tried to do. The difference," he went on, "is I came out the other side. And unlike you, I never needed deception or secret lovers to feel like a man." Camille stood frozen in the middle of the chaos, wine-stained, shaking. It was the first time Julian saw her mask slip entirely, revealing the frantic, unstable woman beneath it. "Everything I did," she said through clenched teeth, "was because you stood in my way. You never aimed higher. You were content with mediocrity. You never challenged yourself. Or me." Julian cut in, silencing her tirade. "Spare it for the next poor guy. I'm done pretending your cruelty was something I had to bear. The next man you try to twist around your finger should be warned," he added, turning to leave. He paused briefly before walking away. "And Camille? You should give Marcus a call. Damien isn't quite the prize you imagined." Then again, neither was Marcus's wife. Once you uncovered what she'd been hiding. Applause broke out in the dining room as Julian exited, head high. Behind him, Camille and Damien's fragile alliance exploded, their furious voices ricocheting off the pristine walls. "You're married?" Camille's scream rang with fury. "Camille, please! It's not what it seems," Damien called out, rushing after her as she marched toward the exit. "Don't follow me," she shouted. "Don't you dare come near me." Outside, Julian stepped into the crisp evening air and handed his keys to the valet. For the first time in months, his breath came freely. The suffocating weight of betrayal and doubt had lifted, not replaced by peace, not yet, but by the hope of it. Hope for a life free of Camille's games and lies. His phone vibrated in his pocket, likely her, already launching into damage control via text. Without even checking, he dismissed the alert. Whatever she had to say would be handled through lawyers now. He'd said everything that mattered. As he waited for his car, the restaurant doors burst open behind him. Camille emerged, streaks of mascara on her cheeks, the dried wine on her dress now a deep, ugly blotch. "You ruined everything," she spat. "My name, my relationships." "No, Camille," he said, still facing away from her. "You did that on your own." I just held up the mirror. His car rolled up. Without turning back, he got in. Through the rearview mirror, he saw her standing alone, disheveled, seething. Damien followed her out next, reaching for her, only to be met by Camille's purse swinging like a club. "Stay away from me," she screamed, her voice echoing across the parking lot. "Both of you, stay the hell away." As Julian's car turned the corner, a small, satisfied smile touched his lips. Camille's evening had veered wildly off script, but for him, everything had unfolded exactly as planned. The elegant dinner, the polished act, the intricate deception, it had all come crashing down, delicate as shattered glass. His phone buzzed again. This time the sender was unfamiliar. "Damien, this isn't over." Julian deleted the message without a moment's hesitation. Damien had been right about one thing. It wasn't over. The divorce would be savage. Camille would fight tooth and nail through every legal channel. The storm hadn't passed, but for the first time since discovering her betrayal, Julian felt something solid beneath his feet. Control. Let them plot and rage. He had no more secrets. Nothing left to lose. The following morning dawned gray and cold, a reflection of the hollow heaviness Julian carried as he sat at the kitchen table. The house felt altered, emptier, but no longer suffocating. Camille's influence lingered in every hand-picked piece, every elegant detail she'd insisted on, but their grip had weakened overnight. His coffee sat untouched, cooling slowly, while he scrolled through the flood of messages on his phone. News of last night's confrontation had spread fast, tearing through their social circles and reducing Camille's pristine image to ruins. Clips of the drama were already making rounds. His phone had been buzzing non-stop since early morning. Friends, co-workers, acquaintances, all reaching out with condolences or prying questions. Another notification appeared. Lena Collins, one of Camille's most trusted allies at the firm. "I had no idea," her message said. "She always told us you were controlling, that you held her back, that you couldn't handle her success. I'm truly sorry, Julian. If I'd known..." He deleted it without replying. Lena had dined with them countless times, had laughed along with Camille's subtle digs at his expense, had witnessed the slow humiliation without lifting a finger. Her remorse, now that Camille's standing had crumbled, meant absolutely nothing. His phone rang again. It was Mitchell Drake, his lawyer. "Camille's team contacted us," Mitchell said plainly. "They're pushing for a fast and quiet settlement. Looks like they really want to stay out of court." Julian let out a dry, cutting laugh. Of course they do. The videos were everywhere. Dozens of clips circulating, some more captivating than others. Mitchell's voice carried a self-satisfied lilt, sprinkled with tantalizing gossip about Mr. Trent's supposed extracurricular activities. Within legal circles, the buzz was that his firm's top brass were less than thrilled about their senior-most partner becoming viral entertainment, especially in light of those infamous cloud leaks. "Not my problem," Julian muttered, tightening his tie as he studied his reflection. He'd chosen his most impeccable suit that morning, armor for the battle he anticipated walking into at work. "Doesn't change the fact Camille wants a sit-down," Mitchell said, his amusement practically audible. "She insists it has to be private and face-to-face." "Out of the question," Julian replied coldly. "I've already made it clear. No direct communication. Everything goes through us now." Mitchell hesitated, and when he spoke again, his tone had sobered. Just so you know, she's been blowing up your office line. Since the doors opened, he added. Julian's jaw flexed as he regarded himself in the mirror. I'll deal with it. I know you will. Oh, and that red wine stunt? Brilliant. Expensive, but brilliant. Every cent was worth it, Julian answered coolly, ending the call as he stepped into the building's lobby, where his assistant Sophie already sat rigidly behind her desk. She'd worked for him for 3 years and had witnessed firsthand how Camille's resentment toward his career had steadily grown. Mrs. Marks's already called 3 times, Sophie informed him, the censure in her voice barely veiled. She's persistent. Said she'll come here herself if you don't call her back. Don't transfer her through, Julian said with resolve. If she turns up, notify security immediately. No exceptions. Sophie nodded, a trace of relief in her expression. Also, Mr. Reddick wants a word in his office. Says it's urgent. She paused, then added, and I saw the videos. That wine thing? Flawless execution. Julian allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Thanks, Sophie. Hold all calls, unless Mitchell Drake rings. His manager for the last 5 years, Travis Reddick, was waiting when Julian arrived. He stood as Julian entered, his expression serious but not accusatory, as Julian had expected. Heard you had quite the evening, Travis said, gesturing for him to close the door. Travis, let me explain. No need, Travis cut in, raising a hand. I saw it. So did most of the building. And that's actually why I called you in. He took a seat and motioned for Julian to join him. The board's been planning to grow our corporate accounts division. We need someone who can stay composed and take charge under pressure. Julian stared, momentarily caught off guard. Are you offering me a promotion? The position comes with a significant raise. And a corner office, Travis replied, sliding a folder across the desk. Your composure last night really impressed some people. A few board members were at the Azure. They witnessed everything. Julian opened the folder and scanned the pages, his brows arching when he saw the salary. I don't even know how to respond. Just say yes, Travis said simply. You've earned it, not just for last night but for consistently delivering, while navigating. He paused, choosing his words carefully, some difficult personal challenges. Before Julian could reply, his phone buzzed. Camille again. Without checking the screen, he rejected the call and kept his eyes on Travis. Speaking of complications, Travis continued, there's a woman at the front desk insisting she speak to you. Security is with her. Julian's jaw tightened. Camille, want me to have her escorted out? No, Julian said, rising and straightening his jacket. I'll deal with it. Travis gave a nod, approving. That's exactly why you're the right person for this role. In the front lobby, Camille stood out like a red alarm flare among the sea of staff and visitors. She was still wearing the tattered gown from the night before, the vibrant fabric now stained with deep wine-colored splotches. Her makeup had run, and her hair was in disarray, far from the polished look she usually presented. Conversations around the room paused as Julian approached, eyes shifting in his direction. You won't even return my calls, Camille said, her voice shaking as the last threads of her composure frayed. All communication goes through counsel now, Julian said, voice clipped and cold. You're not supposed to be here. Just 5 minutes. That's all I ask, Camille pleaded softly, stepping closer. Let me explain. You think I owe you that? Julian laughed, sharp and caustic enough to draw more stares. That's rich, even for you. It spun out of control, Camille said, reaching out. Julian stepped away before she could touch him. I made mistakes, but we can still repair this. Try again, therapy, a fresh start. This can't be fixed, he said flatly. Julian cut her off, his voice slicing through the room like sharpened steel. There's no undoing this, Camille. You didn't just wander into this situation. You planned it. Every move you made was deliberate. He didn't matter, she said quickly, tears welling up in her eyes. Tears that, to Julian, looked more like strategy than sorrow. Damien was just a step, Same as Marcus, he shot back, raising his voice. Or are you going to pretend he was some grand exception? Camille flinched, her gaze flicking to the small audience now watching them. You're trying to disgrace me. Disgrace? Julian gave a harsh, hollow laugh. No, Camille. Disgrace is discovering hidden photos of you with another man mixed into our vacation pictures. It's reading phony love letters while you mocked me behind my back. That's what disgrace looks like. I was miserable, Camille murmured, trying to claw her way back into sympathy. You never really saw me. I saw you better than anyone, he said coldly. I saw the restlessness, the hunger for more, always more. My love, my help. It was never enough. You chased flashier things. Well, he paused, his voice sinking. Now there's nothing left. Her poised demeanor shattered. Please don't. The firm's threatening to ship me to Minneapolis, and Damien's wife found out everything. She's already talking, Julian said flatly. The truth's out, about you, him, all of it. The damage is yours to handle. Walk out with dignity, or security walks you out. Your decision. Julian, I'm begging you. She reached toward him, desperation overtaking her calm. We can fix this. I'll do better. I mean it. He turned to the waiting security team. She was just leaving, he told them calmly. In an instant, her sorrow turned venomous. The tears vanished, replaced by the ruthless glare he knew too well. You'll pay for this, she hissed. I'll bleed you dry in the divorce. There's nothing left for you to take, Julian said quietly. You already stripped away my trust, my faith, my love. What's left is just property. He didn't flinch as the guards escorted her out. Her sobs echoed behind her, poisoned with anger, not heartbreak. As Julian returned to his office, co-workers averted their eyes, pretending to be immersed in tasks, though their gazes trailed him. Whispers hummed in the air behind him. Sophie stood waiting by his door, a look of concern tinged with a hint of respect. Mr. Trent called while you were downstairs, she said. Julian's jaw set. What did he want? Didn't sound friendly, she replied. I saved the voicemail. She hit play. Damien's voice crackled through the speaker, stripped of charm, snarling with menace. You think you're smart? You have no idea who you've crossed. I'll bury you, wreck your reputation. When I'm done, you'll be lucky to clean toilets. Julian ended the message with a tap. Anyone else reach out? Camille's lawyer, twice, pressing for a private sit-down, Sophie said. She paused, a faint grin forming. Also, 3 recruiters. They said the way you handled things, especially with Damien, was masterful. Julian settled into his chair, eyes landing on a stack of promotion papers Travis had dropped off. Corporate portfolio, executive suite, the role Camille always claimed he'd never achieve. Exactly what I needed, another climb through office politics. Sophie smiled. You managed to take down Camille and Damien in a single day. You can handle whatever this place throws at you. She hesitated. HR called too. Offered time off if you need space to process. He shook his head. Camille doesn't get to steer my life off course anymore. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Damien. This isn't over. You've made an enemy. Julian blocked the number without hesitation. Let Damien rage. Let Camille cry. Their hold on him was broken, shattered, like the lies they wrapped around him. The rest of the day drifted by in a blur. Meetings, hollow praise, and congratulations he never asked for. Everyone had seen the video. Everyone had a theory. And suddenly, everyone had a Camille anecdote to offer. She always had this air, like she was above everyone, one colleague whispered during lunch. I should have warned you, said another. At those events, the way she talked about you, she painted you as controlling, said you couldn't handle her ambition. We believed her. She was convincing. By the time nightfall arrived, Julian's head pounded from the onslaught of confessions and sympathy he'd been forced to endure. He had always suspected that Camille was unhappy, and had long been aware that she held him in low regard. Still, hearing how bluntly she had criticized him to others landed harder than expected. That evening, he made his way to the usual spot, an unassuming neighborhood bar Camille had always dismissed as beneath her taste. The worn leather booths and scratched-up wood-paneled walls brought a strange kind of comfort after the emotional turbulence of the day. The place was bustling, and several heads turned his way as he entered, conversations pausing mid-sentence. News had traveled quickly, as it always did in their social circle, and thanks to the video, Julian had unexpectedly become the center of attention. "There he is," Max called out, lifting his glass. "The man of the hour." "Spare me," Julian muttered as he slid into the booth beside them. "You kidding?" Jonas said, grinning ear to ear. "That clip was pure gold. The way you flung that wine, that deserved a slow clap, and the way you shut Damien down." "Epic," Max added, flagging the bartender for another round. "I heard Damien's wife kicked him out, changed the locks and froze their accounts. She didn't hold back. And Camille?" "Word is, she's been placed on leave," Jonas chimed in. "Management's reviewing her timesheets. Looks like a lot of those working late nights never made it onto the books." Julian took the beer Jonas handed him, raising an eyebrow. "And where exactly are you getting all this?" "Small world," Max said with a shrug. "My sister works at her firm, says the partners are furious. Camille's drama is dragging down their image." "I don't want to talk about them," Julian said sharply. "Fair enough," Jonas replied, nodding and motioning to the waitress. "Then what should we talk about? Your new nickname? All the recruiters blowing up your inbox? Or maybe the 3 women who asked me for your number yesterday?" That earned a genuine laugh from Julian. Literally anything else would be great. "To new beginnings," Max said, raising his glass. "And to karma finally doing its job." "To karma," Jonas echoed. "And to the people who stick by you when it all hits the fan." Their glasses clinked together, and for the first time in what felt like ages, Julian allowed himself to smile. A real one. The bitterness hadn't vanished, and maybe it never would, but it no longer had its grip on him. Camille and Damien had tried to ruin him, but all they had done was set him free. "Holy hell," Jonas said suddenly, eyes glued to his phone. "You're trending on Twitter. #WineRevenge is blowing up." "Oh God," Julian groaned. "No, seriously," Max said, laughing. "This is amazing. You're a hero now, for every cheated-on spouse out there. Grace under fire. Style, too." "And a killer aim," Jonas added. "Tell me you practiced that toss." Julian couldn't help but laugh. "Maybe I did." His phone buzzed on the table. A message from Camille, sent from an unfamiliar number. "I miss you. I made mistakes. I still love you. Please call me. We can fix this." Without a second thought, Julian deleted the message and shut off his phone. Tomorrow would bring a new wave of drama. More guilt, more games, more hollow pleas. Camille wouldn't give up easily. She never had. Damien would keep trying to stir trouble. The divorce would be drawn out, messy, and very public. But sitting there in the same bar Camille used to mock, surrounded by real friends, Julian felt surprisingly at ease. Let them scheme. Let them dig deeper. They had already done their worst, and he was still standing. The version of himself that used to jump through hoops for Camille, that took her contempt as gospel, that questioned his own value, that man was gone. In his place stood someone steady, someone who had reclaimed his self-respect, someone who would no longer settle for less than he deserved. And on that, Camille had actually been right about one thing. He wasn't the man she had married. He had become someone better. That's it for the first story, but don't go anywhere. A new adventure is waiting to begin. Let's jump in. She was back on her knees. This time, though, the sobbing was relentless, beyond anything I'd seen from her before. The last time couldn't even compare, except for the posture. That, at least, was the same. "Fine." She'd been unclothed then, too. That part hadn't changed. But Chad? He sounded completely different this time. Quieter. Almost subdued. When I hit him, I poured every last bit of rage into the punch. Now he was on the floor, wheezing, dragging himself away like a wounded animal. I stabbed the phone's keypad. Dialed 911. The voice on the other end asked me what kind of emergency it was. Police, fire, or medical. I said I needed the cops. I told them I was at my residence and that a man was trying to kill me. He'd taken my shotgun. I pleaded for them to send help right away. The phone slipped from my grip and hit the ground, the dispatcher's voice still coming through the speaker, trying to keep me talking. I racked the shotgun and yelled, "God, don't shoot!" Then I brought my boot down hard on the phone until it stopped working. As I walked past her, she clung to my leg. I didn't stop, just kept moving, dragging her across the carpet. She was crying, begging through choked sobs, "Please don't, please no!" Step drag, step drag. I began circling the bed, step drag, step drag. I kicked my leg loose. She crumpled, motionless, still weeping, the sound lower now, more guttural. It reminded me of a dog caught in a snare. I turned the shotgun on Chad. My fingers curled around the barrel. In that second, I saw a spark in his eyes, a flicker of hope. He lunged for it, hands scrambling, locking around the stock. One hand hit the trigger. I twisted the gun hard toward myself, pulling it offline, dragging it closer, making his finger squeeze the shot. The blast tore through the air. I felt the pellets graze the top of my left arm. My palms burned from the hot steel. I didn't pause. I gripped the shotgun like a club and started swinging. By the third hit to his head, he was unconscious. I spread his legs apart and drove the butt of the gun between them like I was swinging for a golf tee. I turned toward her. Her breath came in sharp gasps now. The screams had stopped. Her eyes were wide and blank with terror. You could read the fear in her expression like it had been etched there. Our eyes met. I flung the shotgun across the room just as I heard the front door burst open. I raised my right arm. Blood soaked my left sleeve. "Police! Drop it!" came the voices as they stormed in, guns drawn. I shouted, "I'm the one who called! He attacked me!" I pointed to Chad's limp body on the floor. She didn't say a word. He couldn't say anything. EMTs were already wrapping my arm, dabbing ointment on my burned skin. Officers were trying to piece together the sequence of events. We'd moved into the living room. From there, I could see the flashing cameras outside. The questions started. I explained that I'd been in my own house. The shotgun belonged to me and had been kept in my bedroom. My account held up. The physical evidence backed it. Chad had grabbed the weapon and tried to use it against me. I had lunged for the barrel, trying to stop him. The 911 audio matched what I said. I wasn't in need of hospitalization. Chad was a different story. He was going to need treatment. As for her, they decided she didn't require medical attention either. But she wasn't going free. As an accomplice in an attempted murder, she was being taken into custody. The officers led her out for booking. "All right, Mr. Smith, I think we're done for now," the detective said, glancing up from his notes. "You gave the officers your full contact info?" he asked. "Yes," I said, drained. The adrenaline was gone. I had nothing left. The night had taken everything out of me. "We'll finish up soon. Just don't go back into the bedroom yet." I nodded. Wasn't planning to. I've had enough of that room. I figured I'd crash at a hotel. "All right," he said. "We'll lock things up here when we're finished." He handed me his card. The truth was, I'd sensed something was wrong for a while. I couldn't say exactly what. Just a persistent feeling that didn't go away. My instincts picked up on something even if my brain couldn't yet. So I stayed sharp, paid attention. One clue at a time, I ruled things out until the answer was clear. She was the issue. It was the small stuff that gave her away. The way she reacted to things, the timing of her responses, those were the signs. At least now I knew what to look for. A month ago, she was better at hiding it. She left no trace behind. There hadn't been any odd phone calls, no mysterious texts to follow up on either. Yet once I truly started noticing the little things, everything began to fall into place. Her behavior alone painted the full picture. She was spending more and more time with Samantha. We'd gotten to know Samantha and her husband, Maurice, through a group of shared acquaintances a little over a year ago. Maurice came across as reserved, even a little soft in his mannerisms. Still, he had a quick, dry humor and didn't mind laughing at his own expense, which made him easy enough to tolerate in social situations. We weren't exactly tight, but I didn't mind the occasional dinner or weekend get-together with them. Samantha, on the other hand, left a sour taste from the start. She was overbearing, constantly sidelining Maurice like he was an afterthought. It wasn't my relationship to critique, so I kept my distance. Still, I couldn't ignore the way she'd speak to me. Condescending, dismissive, and on more than one occasion, outright rude. I confronted her about it more than once. She wasn't the type to retreat or apologize, I'll give her that. But she and my wife connected almost instantly. Whenever we got together, those two would go on for hours, chatting like old friends who hadn't seen each other in decades. Over time, the occasional double-date dinners faded away. They were replaced with frequent outings just for the two of them. Lunches, evening drinks, weekend plans. About 3 weeks ago, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I discreetly installed some surveillance, bugs to be exact. 1 in her car, and 4 tucked away in the handbags she used the most. She had plenty, but I picked the ones that rarely left her side. The devices were tiny, modern, and transmitted everything wirelessly. They looked like miniature pins fused together, easy to conceal, nearly impossible to spot. Yesterday, I was listening to one of the recordings. They'd met at Samantha's place for lunch. The whole conversation centered around Samantha gushing about her partner. Apparently, Samantha had a significant other and was trying to recruit my wife into whatever they had going on. It took me a moment to fully grasp what I was hearing, but once I did, I was consumed by rage. Just from the way they spoke, the tone, the ease, I knew my wife had already crossed the line, and she wasn't planning on stopping. Together, they were actively laying the groundwork to dismantle our marriage. On paper, we were still husband and wife, but what I was hearing said otherwise. I sat there, paralyzed, as they casually unraveled every promise we'd made. After all those years, decades, of life together, I realized I barely recognized the person I had married. Samantha, meanwhile, seemed to take pleasure in belittling Maurice. Now their sights were on me. I couldn't begin to fathom how she could be so cold. The conversation rolled on, upbeat and breezy, while Maurice lingered in the background, doting on them. Her voice practically hummed with excitement. And me? I just sat there, rooted to the spot, overtaken by numb disbelief. I must have mentally checked out for a while. The shock hit me like a freight train. I couldn't stay near her, not without exploding. After I threw up into the trash bin beside my desk, I told my assistant to inform her that I'd been called away on urgent business. My assistant even offered to pack a bag and drop it at home right before she left for her own lunch date, with Samantha, of all people, so I could swing by and grab it before heading to the airport. That was 14 days ago. The time since has been a blur. I've done nothing but sit with it all, replay every moment in my head. I still can't understand how she ever thought I'd accept such a betrayal. And Samantha? She wasn't just involved, she was orchestrating it. And despite it all, every recording had her claiming she loved me. I couldn't make sense of it. Her reasoning was so twisted, I had to consider the possibility that something was medically wrong with her. But medical condition or not, they were coming for me. I had to take measures to ensure my safety. Charging in without a plan would end in disaster. Someone would end up dead, and I'd be staring down a life sentence. In my current frame of mind, maybe even the death penalty. That couldn't happen. I had to neutralize the threat. For good. I knew it wouldn't be simple. She'd grown used to everything I had built. The exclusive memberships, the polished image, the wealth. She adored the lifestyle. She thrived on admiration, on being the woman everyone envied. After 25 years together, I knew exactly what made her tick. And I'd played the fool long enough. That resentment, that long simmering fury, was what kept me level. I was going to annihilate her methodically, but timing was critical. I wasn't ready to make my move just yet. I used her computer to take out a new life insurance policy on myself, another $2 million with a double payout in the event of murder or accident. She was listed as the sole beneficiary. It wasn't until last week that I finally found out the name of her lover, Chad Koulis. I did a deep dive. Stanford graduate, MBA from Wharton, son of a powerful political family. The guy was destined for a life in the spotlight, entitled, polished, arrogant. He'd never walked down the aisle, but apparently he'd proposed more than once. Society blogs and gossip sites had plenty to say about that. I pulled up photos, watched clips from his speeches and campaign stops. Yeah, he was running for office, and that got me thinking. What was that old saying again? They say any publicity is good publicity. I was beginning to doubt that more and more. This week, it all seemed to be reaching a breaking point. She was jittery, running hot with nervous energy. Our sex life had become relentless, urgent, feverish. She reacted to everything I did. I honestly lost count of how many orgasms she had before I even got close. After all, her taste in luxury purses had taught me a lot about what got her going. Meanwhile, I was seething, quietly, but deeply. From the information I'd been able to collect, it looked like Chad was balancing Samantha along with at least 2 other married women. His usual hunting ground? The country club. Conveniently enough, that also doubled as a donor pool for his upcoming campaign. I found out he was organizing some kind of gathering the following week at Samantha's house, so I tracked down a desperate bottom feeder, someone who needed fast cash and didn't ask questions. He broke into Samantha's place and wired it up with hidden cameras and mics. I paid him off in cash. He was about to flee the country and needed the money. The arrangement worked perfectly for both of us. Monday. She was coming apart at the seams, consumed by guilt, but electrified by anticipation. She practically wore Bob into the ground, caught up in vivid fantasies of Chad, of group sex, of her husband watching. She hit peaks she'd never touched before. Tuesday. The video came through, Chad in the thick of it, with all 3 women. Maurice and another woman's husband floated in the background, dressed and acting like servants. They helped Chad set the mood, fetched drinks, played their parts. The footage was crystal clear, like I was standing right there in the room. The men were verbally humiliated, the abuse almost theatrical in its cruelty. They were squeezed into degrading outfits. There were sex toys, costumes, a barrage of lewd talk, most of it Chad hyping himself up. He was clearly in charge, relishing every second. He name-dropped constantly, bragged about private jets, hinted that real political power was within his grasp. He pushed Samantha to use a comically oversized toy to utterly humiliate Maurice, to shatter him. He barked commands like a drill sergeant. The whole place reeked of narcotics and debauchery. It was a circus of corruption and excess. The surveillance equipment captured it all. That night, she was skittish. She shattered a plate in the kitchen. I could tell. This was it. The moment she'd been rehearsing over and over. Chad was on his way. Together, they were going to lay it all out for me. Chad was 32, ex-jock, still hit the gym regularly. He wasn't remotely threatened by a middle-aged, overweight husband nearing 50. He seemed more eager to humiliate me than he was interested in her. As for my wife, she seemed to have completely lost touch with reality. This wasn't blackmail. It was her chasing the high she imagined Chad gave her. I had done everything I could to prepare. The stage was set. The show was supposed to start at 8 p.m. Their plan: corner me, force a divorce that would tear me apart, level false accusations, drag me through court. Chad would throw around his influence, threaten me with cops, tax fraud, whatever stuck. They'd even hinted at violence. And if all else failed, they assumed they'd steamroll me with pressure until I broke. I heard Chad enter through the front. I sat in the living room, sipping a beer, watching a game. Then I quietly slipped out the back door. Hiding in the yard was almost fun. I watched them storm through the house, searching. Chad was fuming. Eventually, they gave up and headed upstairs. I saw them disappear into the bedroom. I gave it a minute, finished my drink, and crept back in through the garage. I had stashed the shotgun just inside the door. I picked it up and made my way to the second floor. The next morning, I woke up in an unfamiliar bed. My arm throbbed with pain. The haze from the sedatives and the shock had finally cleared. My hands were on fire, and then it all came rushing back. The fury hit me like a wave, raw and blinding. It filled me with purpose. I turned on the television. The news was everywhere. Chad was in the hospital, arrested for attempted murder. His people had already begun damage control. False story, political attack, total setup, the usual spin machine. But the silence from his political backers spoke volumes. Not one came forward to defend him. When reporters pressed, they ducked and dodged every question. I got up and went to the bathroom, peeled away the bandages from my hands and arm, and stepped into the shower. The phone rang. Caller ID showed it was the detective who'd given me his card. Definitely not a robocall. "Hello," I said. "Mr. Smith, this is Detective Green." "Good afternoon, Detective. What can I help you with?" "Would you be willing to come down to the station for a chat this afternoon?" "Sure," I said. "That's no problem." There was no way I was in any shape to make it into the office that day. "How about 2 in the afternoon?" he offered. "That's fine," I said. "See you then, Detective." "Appreciate you making the time, Mr. Smith," said the lead investigator as we sat down. "Of course," I replied. "Honestly, I'm still reeling from everything that happened. I'm hoping you can shed some light on this, because none of it adds up," I told him, weariness etched in my voice. "How do you know Chad Coulis?" he asked directly. "I don't, not personally. I've only ever seen him act like a loudmouth on TV." "Then why do you think he targeted you?" the detective continued. "From what I found out, he was involved with my wife. I had no idea he was even inside my house, until I walked in and caught them. In my bedroom. Tell me exactly what happened." "I had come in from the backyard and heard a man's voice," I began. "I followed the noise upstairs. That's where I found them, both naked. My shotgun was lying next to him, and she was kneeling. You can guess what she was doing. I already had her phone in my hand and had dialed 911. He started yelling, snatched the shotgun, and pointed it at me. I hit the call button. That's when he leveled the barrel at my head. I charged at him, caught him by surprise. I managed to push the gun aside and get a grip on it. The whole thing happened so fast, but that's how I remember it." I stopped for a second, rubbing at my arm before continuing. "I think missing that first shot rattled him. I pulled the gun away and hit him with it until he stopped struggling." "You had to hit him there to make him stop?" the detective asked, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "No," I admitted. "He was already down. That last blow, that one was for me. I couldn't hold back. But it was only once." That moment of raw honesty landed hard. The detective could see himself doing the same in that situation. It made Bob feel more authentic, like someone who could just as easily be him. In that instant, the officer stopped viewing Bob as a suspect and started seeing him as the wronged party. Despite his experience, the detective began to unconsciously favor the evidence that supported Bob's account. Then the backlash started. Chad's supporters went on the offensive. His father opened his checkbook and started spreading cash. Before long, the media was wall-to-wall coverage. "It was a setup," they screamed. "It's the left's fault. Antifa, BLM, the socialist radicals." They denied everything. Claimed there was no gun, no husband, no cheating wife, not even a house. Some even insinuated the entire town was a fabrication. And just like that, all the attention pivoted to Bob. He became the scapegoat. "Look at this guy," they cried. "He got caught with weed when he was 17, obviously a crazed drug-dealing liberal." "All fabricated," others retorted. "This is pure fiction." The media frenzy grew rabid. Figures from Chad's political orbit began poking their heads out, cautiously testing public sentiment like prairie dogs. The entire nation seemed to hold its breath. Bob's wife remained in custody, awaiting her court date. The bail hearings turned into must-see television. Chad's was scheduled for 11 a.m. on Thursday. By the time Wednesday rolled around, media outlets aligned with Chad were losing their minds. Meanwhile, their opposition soaked up the chaos, milking the spectacle for ratings. Viewership numbers exploded. By noon that day, the uproar reached a boiling point. Emotions were flaring. By the time prime time hit, the coverage had turned theatrical, like mobs were moments away from storming the gates with torches and pitchforks. Some pundits began portraying Chad as a martyr. Preachers no one had ever heard of were brought on for grave interviews. Then came Thursday. At 8 a.m. sharp, several major newsrooms received a peculiar email containing a single hyperlink. Most networks have protocols for vetting this kind of thing. The link led to a secure portal with 6 straight hours of uncut footage. Chad, his entourage, and their hired help. There were multiple camera angles. Everything was documented. For convenience, the site even included condensed clips. By 8:10, those clips were everywhere. Follow-up emails hit the inboxes of key political donors and corporate backers. The Wall Street Journal was first to run the story. Suddenly, every pundit fell silent. By 10 a.m., Chad's campaign manager, his top strategist, and his finance director had all submitted resignations. What followed was a cascade of damning evidence. Chad was denied bail. The trio of spouses involved, now nicknamed the Country Club Wives by the press, found themselves in a complete meltdown. The media tore into the staff with relentless aggression, but even they couldn't match the avalanche of memes that flooded the internet. The scandal rocked the foundations of the country club, shaking its glossy facade to the core. Coverage didn't let up for a second. Stories of excess and scandal spread like a brushfire through privileged social circles. Hypocrisy flourished, accusations came fast and from all directions. Many members quietly vanished, retreating to secluded getaways or second properties. Chad's world had completely collapsed. He was deserted. It resembled a mass exodus, like vermin abandoning a sinking vessel. Anyone remotely associated with him rushed to sever ties before the fallout consumed them. Even his father began to back away. Chad had become untouchable. Several formal inquiries into his behavior were underway. She, on the other hand, was sitting silently in a bare interrogation room, wrists shackled and clad in an ill-fitting orange uniform. She hadn't uttered a single word since the night everything came apart. She appeared hollowed out, diminished. Her children hadn't reached out, not even a card or call, and her parents had gone quiet as well. She spent her days in her cell, mute and unmoving. From behind the bars, the television in the communal area played endlessly. Once the guards and inmates realized who she was, they left it tuned to a constant feed of political commentary. The pundits pulled no punches. Her court-appointed lawyer sat quietly at her side. The district attorney had come in person to deliver the plea deal. The moment her eyes met his, she felt a jolt. His stare was predatory. She understood then. To him, she was just a means to an end. The DA belonged to the rival political machine, and Chad's disgrace was a strategic gift. He had every intention of capitalizing on it. He played the incriminating video, Chad, clearly orchestrating the entire affair during that now notorious event. No one had been spared by the prosecutors, not the staff, not the club members. Conspiracy charges had been filed across the board. The DA laid out Bob's testimony with surgical precision, backing it with hard evidence. He sidestepped any mention of who had installed the hidden cameras or leaked the tapes. Those questions remained unanswered. Then he carefully presented the charges she would face, estimating the years, decades, she might serve. Only after that did he extend the deal. Bob had already initiated divorce proceedings. The papers were delivered to her inside the jail. His offer? A symbolic $1. When she didn't appear in court, the divorce went through uncontested. Chad's former political supporters turned on him overnight, erasing every trace of their prior alliances. He vanished from photos like an airbrushed embarrassment. Not even the old Soviet tactics matched their efficiency. Bob, meanwhile, wrestled with anxiety and sorrow. After years of happiness, the abrupt loneliness cut deep. Something steely had taken root in Bob's demeanor, yet he felt no regret. He had acted decisively to eliminate the danger, for good. He sleeps well at night. His bond with his children remains strong. Bob is now a grandfather. He's prevailed in multiple civil lawsuits and has built up a stable financial safety net. He's been piecing together a new life, though it can never quite resemble the one he lost. The family house was sold. He's ready to start over. He no longer chases approval. The past doesn't haunt him. He's made peace with what is. He keeps the memories that matter close, and that suffices. Bob has found contentment, and for him, that means never wanting more. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.